Hello, and thank you for joining us on Hello Mayor. I'm City of Las Vegas Mayor Carolyn Goodman, and do we have a great show for you today? I'm so excited. While we continually are moving forwards to becoming a world-class city, it's important to remember how we got our start. And today we're going to take a step back in time to revisit vintage Vegas. And to help me, I am joined by Chairman of the City of Las Vegas Historic Preservation Commission, Bob Stodahl, as well as Rossi Rollin Cotter, President and CEO of the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here. I am so excited because I always learn from both of you. And if I'm learning, all of you are learning too, unless you're old. So let's talk. We're going to start off. We always have young people that look, what am I going to do in my life? What's that spark that's going to happen? So a little bit about your background. You're media personified and historian. Let's have a little snippet of where you grew up, what you did, what kind of education, and why'd you get into the media?
Well, I grew up in Las Vegas. Came here in 1956. My dad went to work was at the Nevada Test Site. That's why we moved up. Went to work for the AEC.
Wow.
And my mother went to work for the city police department at that time. I went to Las Vegas High School.
The old Las Vegas, what was the old Las Vegas?
Right, the original, well, the one that was built in 1930, and is still here, and is still a great building. And while I was at Las Vegas High School, I worked as a busboy at the Stardust, the Riviera, and the Dunes, and our other guest is tore down my last busboy stop at the Riviera. Decided that was not the occupation for me. And after graduating, I decided I wanted to get into the media. And so I got a job sweeping the floor at the Review-Journal.
What a great place to start. Oh my God.
Well, in those days you swept the floor, it was all lead and from the linotype machines. And so you swept it, and then we would melt it and reuse it. Decided that wasn't, I didn't want to sweep floors at the RJ, and found an opening for a Sunday night radio announcer, midnight to 6. And then I bumped into a guy by the name of Hank Thornley, a former city councilman, and went to work for Channel 8. And had a wonderful time as growing up with this town, as this town has grown up as well. So that's where it all started.
And you must have been an avid reader and a historian right from the get-go, but with your parents here so early,
well,
you lived it.
We can go all the way back to the 5th grade in California, where the school system was having financial problems, and everybody and the faculty had to teach a class. I was fortunate enough for 2 years to get the librarian as my teacher.
Oh, wow.
And that was just a magic time, and it opened the world to me, and so that curiosity carried over into the media business.
And that's so important for young people and for us all, continuing on to keep reading. And Mr. Rollin Cotter, Rossi, I mean, I know I hear about you all the time, and your little bit of your background. Tell us, please.
Well, Mayor, our family moved to Las Vegas in 1951 from Kentucky. My dad worked in the casinos back in Newport, and we came out here because they were building the Sands Hotel, and he went to work at the El Rancho for a year, and then he went with the Sands. He was there for 39 years. I went to St. Joseph's Grade School, 14th and Bridger.
That's still there, too?
Still there, yes. We need to preserve that if we can. And then Bishop Gorman High School, the original one on Maryland Parkway. They've now built a beautiful campus up in the Summerlin area. And then went to Arizona State, got my degree in marketing, and came back to Las Vegas. Went to work at the Landmark, which ironically I got to push the plunger and to blow that one up when we did that a few years ago. But went to work at the Landmark, and then from there went to work for the Central Telephone Company at the time. But I always wanted to get into the hotel casino business because my father, I grew up around all of that. Friends were in there, their fathers and mothers and so forth. And so I had an opportunity to go to the convention center for the Teamsters convention to set up their telephone system, and dropped off a resume. And Paul Titus, who was the director of advertising at the time, called me and said, we're looking for a marketing research person. And I raised my hand and went to work, and that was 44 years ago. So a lot of opportunity. I've seen the town grow, but it's the greatest place to be. And Love every day of it. There's no 2 days the same in Las Vegas.
Isn't that the excitement of it all? And knowing you both really had your education here too. So incredible. But there's a little bit of timing there for both of you, being at the right place at the right time with a little opportunity, but each proving yourself in what you were doing before you got the next leg up to the next step. What was it like? What caused the heart of the downtown to locate there? Why did people in the 50s, why were they living here?
Well, you had downtown was and is still the heart of Las Vegas. The Las Vegas Strip is a wonderful extension. Maybe it's the right arm, but the heart of Las Vegas is still Fremont Street, and that's all the way back to 1905 when the railroad sold the lots here, and that was the main.
Oh, I was under the impression that the dam had a great deal to do with the physical residential development in downtown. That's inaccurate?
The first residential development was in 1910, and those were the railroad cottages. In order to entice qualified workmen, electricians, carpenters, plumbers, and pipe fitters to work on the railroad, they had to build the neighborhood. So the first real housing development was on 3rd and 4th Street, the railroad cottages. It was the railroad, and then through the 20s, we'll move real fast up, but through the 20s, literally through the entire 20s, from 21 up until 29 when the legislation was signed, the town was living on the moment, the dream that they were going to build a dam at the test site. So housing development, real estate people came to Las Vegas. There was a lot of energy, but every day was hope, was hope, was hope. And then in the 30s, 1931 and up till 35, they built the dam. And what developed out of that was Boulder Highway. And Boulder Highway, just as a little footnote, that's where the Dunes Hotel, that's where the Dunes was located. And that's where the Silver Slipper was located. They were names of nightclubs. And so there are nightclubs all the way from what's now Eastern all the way out to a lot of speakeasies, alcohol.
But on Boulder Highway.
But on Boulder Highway.
Because the residents at that time, the workmen were living in Boulder City.
Boulder City.
And then the connector was to get down to the heart where ultimately you grew up in the 50s.
Now, the Las Vegas changed post-World War II.
Okay.
It was during the war that Henderson was built, so you had a lot of energy that went that way. And you also had a lot of energy that went to the west and also went to the south to where Beverly Green neighborhood is. That's post-World War II. Really got Beverly Green neighborhood was started in 1950.
Okay, so there's your time.
Right.
Were both your families, is that where they located? Is Beverly Green neighborhood where St. Joseph is? When I go there and visit or had been reading there, I lose where I am.
Right. That's some of the Huntridge area and the downtown area. We lived on Bruce and Stewart when we first came here in a house on Bruce and Stewart, and there were a lot of different housing areas in there, a lot of apartments that were built downtown. We moved out to way out to Twin Lakes, which was one of the first developments from a California developer. Had refrigeration, and so I grew up in the Twin Lakes area, which was way out there.
We were just a little further
You're
out.
way out.
We were out to Mallard, and Mallard was the last house and what we had daily were tortoises coming in. It was all desert behind us.
I got them all at our house. But I have to tell you, before we continue the conversation, we want to give you a feel of what Las Vegas was like during the 50s. So here's a brief look.
Las Vegas, Nevada, the entertainment and fun capital of the world, where the clock never stops and the doors never close. This is the city of daytime sun and nighttime fun. Las Vegas plays host to more than 10 million visitors a year. It is linked with the principal cities throughout the United States by 4 major airlines with 52 flights every day. Some of the world's finest national highways, as well as modern streamliners, are used to reach this desert resort. Las Vegas' famous Strip is world-renowned for its hotels and motels, where the vacationer can spend many interesting hours, even days, browsing through well-appointed shops or viewing the breathtaking beauty of the carefully landscaped grounds. Although these hostelries were built at the cost of millions of dollars and the accommodations are very luxurious, the rates are within the reach of all. Each hotel features a nightly stage show with the world's top entertainers. Casinos where Lady Luck holds sway, and legal gaming is conducted under the supervision of the Nevada State Tax Commission. Here one will witness a perfect example of the cosmopolitan atmosphere, where blue jeans and mink are a common sight side by side, and the slogan is, "Come as you are." Fremont Street is the main thoroughfare in downtown Las Vegas. This great white way of the West is one of the most unusual streets in the world. It has a combination of smart shops that offer both Eastern and Western products, and modern hotels with colorful casinos, where the chant of the croupiers can be heard as one walks along the brilliantly lighted way.
Is that awesome? I mean, is that exciting? Was that phenomenal? I know you wanted to make a comment on it because I got tons.
This is 1955. That's when the Frontier Hotel changed their name. So you can date it with that particular sign. But as you notice that every other hotel was 2 stories. That was a zoning at that time. You're not allowed to build I always loved the Sky Room at the Desert Inn Hotel. It was on the 2nd floor. But the first high-rise on the Las Vegas Strip,
I mean, it's absolutely, well,
Riviera Hotel was the
Riviera,
first.
Riviera, because I worked there in '64, and there was only like 4 or 6 flight levels there. But I noticed they said 10 million visitors for the year. And what are we up to now, Ross?
It will be 43 million this year. So.
And the airport, my goodness, that airport and Bonanza, the flight, I remember coming into town or leaving, and you just walk through the door of the airport, out the back door, up right onto the plane.
Right.
So, and then, of course, the magnificent, I mean, it was just, everything was up and down the stairs into the planes.
Well, the first airfield is, if you want to go to the first, now airport's one thing, the first airfield was right over behind what is now the Mob Museum. That was the first airfield. Landing, you could land a plane there. Then the first real airport was on the southeast corner of Paradise and behind the the SLS Hotel. Underneath the monorail was the first airport, Western Airlines, or Western Air Express, 1926. That was the first airport.
And that was for small planes or commercial? Commercial flights. And so what year would that be about?
1926, April 17th is when it started.
Right, Lindbergh could have come, but he didn't. It was only Howard that came here.
Then it moved to what's now Nellis. So, and then it moved to the Crockett's area.
Oh my gosh, you brought a whole nother subject up here. Nellis, when does that come in? But the reality is, what was it like living in the 50s in Beverly Glen, Twin Lakes? The town stopped where? If you were at Twin Lakes, you were at the edge.
You were at the edge. In fact, growing up in Twin Lakes, it was a dude ranch, and they developed the houses next to it, and that was the Twin Lakes, which is Lorenzi Park now. But they had horse riding. They also had bungalows out there, and some famous entertainers would stay there to get their residency to get a divorce in the state. You'd see people riding in their horses up and through. Near Muni Golf Course today, but that was Lloyd Tridel's house that was right there behind Muni Golf Course. So we were way out in the desert. There was only one way to get to downtown in the Strip, and that was the Bonanza Underpass, which was 2 lanes. And when it rained, they used to have to close off because it would flood, and then you would have to go over there was a lumber yard there. That was the only way you could get to downtown or to the Strip. So
the
it was very
feeling,
small.
I mean, did you feel already at that time any energy of something more important, bigger happening in town, or did you feel the next piece probably was to the core? What were the hotels in the core of downtown at the time? Do you recall?
Well, you had, well, of course, the El Cortez, the El
Which is
Cortez
still
being,
fabulous.
which is still there. And then you had the Horseshoe, the Westerner, you had the Golden Nugget, you had the Las Vegas Club, South Saggy you had. I mean, you've had, some of them are still in the downtown area, but that was really the start of the casino side. And there was always a buzz in Las Vegas,
Yes.
no matter what it was. There was always there was a lot of opportunity. Even when you were growing up here, you knew it was a fun place, and it was a very free and flowing community to live in. And things just kept happening. And we talked a little bit about World War II, where you had the soldiers who were maneuvers in California would come up here, Nellis Gunnery Range. I mean, there was a lot of things that created interest in Las Vegas as a city, but the hotels kept coming in and adding more things in the entertainment. But downtown is really where everything was. And you had the train station at the end of Fremont Street, Union Pacific train station. And so that was the loop, and you would drive up and down there and take the loop and go down.
As a high schooler, were you doing that? Were you on Fremont Street?
You do the triangle. What you would go from the Blue Onion, you'd drive up, and then you'd go over to the Tip Top or the Roundup. These were drive-ins, and you'd maybe stop, and they would come over and put your tray, and you'd do the thing, and then you'd order your Coke, and then you would go down to the.
I mean,
the
not
Blue
to
Onion.
give Sonic a big boost here, but those drive-in where the little girls used to roller skate up to your, that's
Right.
what you had?
Right, that's what you had, and you just continued doing that loop. Then they opened up this really unique place called Blackett's, which served tacos. That was the big deal, tacos. That was on Charleston, next to Community Chevrolet. And that was via Friday and Saturday night, just like you would see in American Graffiti.
Let me go off script a little bit now that you mentioned tacos. How was the diversity of this community? Was it diverse at all or not?
Yes. Well, the answer is yes. A large African American population, not so large Hispanic population, Asian population. In the 50s, a real influx, about 56, 57, of the Cuban from Havana, from Cuba, because of the
Gaming?
No, because Castro said no gaming there. And,
So
and
they came here
They
for
came
that.
here, and so you had a lot of that. But the energy, when you're a teenager, everything is sort of exciting. But there was also just an energy that was going on in Las Vegas in the 50s. You had the Sands, the Desert Inn, the Dunes, the Frontier became the New Frontier, the Sahara, the Royal Nevada. It was just booming. You had the Moulin Rouge in North Las Vegas or on Bonanza that was built. All this energy was going on, all this construction. It was almost like the 90s in a sense.
It was, yes. It
And
was.
you felt, how did Las Vegas not develop thoroughly right out there into that resort corridor? I mean, we sustained our local hotels in the downtown, serving mostly local population or tourism. What were we at that point? And was there this difference between entertainment in the downtown and the high-end entertainment on the Strip in the late 50s and 60s?
Well, in the 50s, especially even the late 50s, Fremont Street was a must-see for people who came here. Even though all of us who lived here, we went downtown to shop. All the shopping was down there, the movie
Penny's, I
theaters.
remember.
Penny's and
Ronzoni's.
Ronzoni's. M.J. Christensen, you had Rex Bell's, you had El Pertel Luggage, you had all of those different stores, Sears. And so that's where we shopped. You went to the Fremont Theater or the El Pertel Theater or the Guild, which was over by the Golden Nugget. So we spent a lot of time as residents here downtown, but the visitors did too, because it was a fun and exciting place to go, as well as the Strip. The Strip had much more of the big entertainment, so there was a difference there, but people had to go to both places. I think the big shift is not as many locals go downtown today as used to, but it was exciting.
I do remember my mother telling me that, and I may be incorrect, but the wattage on Fremont Street was bigger and stronger than that at on downtown at Times Square.
Well, I don't know whether that's but you know, we
It's a
could
good
also see it
rumor,
from outer
in
space
fact.
with another one.
I know, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
But there was, I think the difference between what was going on Fremont Street and the Strip was there was lots of space and land on the Las Vegas Strip. Downtown was lots of little clubs. You had the Golden Nugget, which really came about, and Guy McAfee, who's really underrated as one of the pioneers of this community. I guess you call these folks colorful, but he was
Benny
also,
Binion?
They were visionaries. They could see the value. The El Cortez, the Nevada Biltmore, downtown didn't have the space, and that's why the El Cortez is where it is, because he could find more space further east of Las Vegas Boulevard. But all the hotels, they were able to sprawl. They were resorts. We didn't have resorts per se downtown. They were out there. They had the swimming pools, and the swimming pool at the El Cortez didn't work. It was right there at the corner.
But the one thing downtown did have was Eldorado.
Eldorado.
And that is an amazing, I know we have footage showing that, but I was simply amazed, and I know, now I don't even want to go there. You say it on record. Where did Eldorado come from briefly, but what year did we begin it here in Las Vegas, and how phenomenal was it? I know they're going to see this.
1935 was the year that it was proposed to the Elks. And while the 3-day event was going on, the Review Journal said we should make this an annual affair. And while it was going, it was so successful. You had 3 or 4 different parades. Everybody was dressing up in costumes. It was really a successful community event, and they weren't even thinking about tourism at that point. But the next year, and they didn't have a rodeo the first year.
But who were making all these floats? Who was spending the money? Where did that come from?
That developed over a period of time.
Where did you sit and watch? Were you part of that crowd out there, both of you?
Yes.
Yes, on the curb somewhere, looking at the
Everybody
parades.
look for Rossi on the curb.
Yeah,
It's
you had
great.
an old timers parade, you had a children's parade, and then you had the beauty parade. As far as the parades were concerned, it was everybody was downtown. For
We
that.
were close to competing with the Rose Bowl. It was at that level, the quality of the floats look at this one. They were amazing. This is, again, probably 53, 54,
Right.
55.
Mm-hmm.
And where was the actual rodeo? Where did that physically
Cashman
take
Field.
place?
Cashman
The original
Field.
Cashman Field, still there, yes. That's
Look
where it
at
was.
the numbers of people participating in the event.
Right, and we had like Roy Rogers was the official Grand Marshal. We had the Lone Ranger. We had Hopalong Cassidy. This was a big thing. In
Rex
fact,
Allen, yeah.
Rex Allen. It was touted as the second largest parade of its type west of the Mississippi, except for the Rose Bowl parade.
So what made it dissipate? What happened?
Well, there was a competition between the Strip and downtown Las Vegas. It got
Already?
got a little awkward in the late 50s, and they said we're not going to participate in the floats. And then,
Now, I want to interrupt you there. At that time, which I think is, look at these beautiful, beautiful ladies. Are they showgirls or what?
these may be. I think these are from Las Vegas High School, the Rockettes.
Oh, my goodness. The hotel industry at that time in the 50s, the hotels were individually privately owned, were they not? No corporate structure, big corporate owning 5 or 6 hotels or anything. They were individually owned, correct?
Right.
So it was the height of competition for the tourist dollar.
Yes. That's exactly right. I was thinking back when you were talking about St. Joseph's when I came to Las Vegas High School. Coming from a sophisticated San Francisco background, I really felt that I knew. But I learned 2 new words real fast at Las Vegas High School: juice and points.
And no comp? You didn't get a
I got
comp?
comp later on. But
Comp,
the
yeah.
kids whose parents had points in a hotel, they had the BMWs.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
And they got to see all the shows right out on the Strip. Now, were there any hotels that were owned out on the Strip that also had a hotel downtown? Was there a partnership in any?
Well, for a while, Guy McAfee and Kozlov had an ownership of the Frontier. There was some of that was going on, and the gentleman that built the Frontier, Morgan, he was on the gaming the tax commission, but he had part of the El Cortez. They change hands on a frequent basis.
But it is true. I mean, when you think of the Sands or the Riv or the Flamingo, it was always about a different entertainer, better food, larger portions, buffets, better swimming pools.
No different than today. We keep raising the bar. We keep reinventing ourselves, and that's exactly what started happening with Las Vegas. It was a reinvention of what we were offering because we were a West Coast California destination for gamblers and for people who wanted to take a vacation in those days. And so
we didn't have the divorce capital like they did in Reno.
Yeah, that was up in
pretty
Reno.
up in the north. Yeah. So that wasn't something that was significant during those days.
Well, we in the early 50s, we became bigger than Reno population-wise. That was an awkward thing for Reno to swallow. We also, in those days, in the late 40s, early 50s, before that, all the movies were shot in Reno. All of a sudden, in the late 40s, early 50s, not only we started getting more divorces, more marriages, bigger population. The battle between Las Vegas and Reno. We didn't really care so much about Reno at that time. I remember Senator Laxalt telling me one time, up until the early 50s, Las Vegas was a foreign country to the people in the north.
To those who are the well-educated north.
Right.
But what about the things that you would be doing? I mean, I recall when we came here in '64, the university was Nevada Southern, and the football games were played at Las Vegas High School on the south field of the actual building that's still there.
Right, Butcher Field. That's the name
Is
of the
that
field.
the name
Yes,
of the
Butcher
field?
Mhm.
And so you were a competitor because you were Gorman at the time.
We were Gorman. We played our home games there too. So because we didn't have a field to play on, so Gorman played their home games at Las Vegas High School.
So how many high schools were there in the 50s? Let's stay on the 50s, late 50s, early 60s.
Well, Rancho was built in 56, 57.
Right. And Western didn't come in until the 60s.
So three.
Said Basic, Boulder City, Vegas,
So
Corman,
the core,
and
the downtown area, really was the focal point. Now, I know there was some growth. When you mentioned the Blue Onion,
Right.
And you think of the four corners there, where it all comes together, and that's where Boulder Highway comes through too. What was going on in that area, which is now we're concentrating so hard on redevelopment and making it attractive again? What was that in those days?
Well, I mean, you have to go back to sort of the beginning in the sense that would be 31, 32, 33. That's where, if you went further east about a block, that's where the Meadows was. And that was really, many people will say, is the start of the entertainment industry within Las Vegas. It was really a very upscale, you could call it the real first nightclub. Judy Garland, known as one of the Gum Sisters, played there in the 30s. And so you had, and then across the street was the Dunes and the Silver Slipper, and all these clubs, and mostly run by folks from Southern California.
So are we at organized crime already, or no?
I would say disorganized.
Disorganized.
But they are related. They know each other from Southern California,
But you had no Cleveland, Chicago, New York element in there?
Not in the 30s. That was really early. Mo Sedway came up here in November of 41. And that sort of, I think, was the opening. The rest of the folks were from Southern California.
Okay.
Sedway being, now we're getting into one of your later shows, but Sedway being with Meyer Lansky.
And so for entertainment yourselves, being young teens, what were you doing? I mean,
well, I'm
that
not at
we
liberty
can
to
talk
say,
about. No, really. Now tell us, give us some stuff here, because I want to talk too about two things. I want to talk about that transition to UNLV and that movement. Then, of course, the beautiful little dome that we sat through. That was the beginning of the. Well, let's go there first, because we may want to go out to the test site too. So let's talk about how did that little dome in there get started? What was its purpose and where was it? So anybody who's watching who has no idea what I'm talking about, what this is.
Well, if you take the 50s, and we've talked about the different hotels that were built in the 50s, it was a building boom. I mean, all of a sudden, Las Vegas went from a couple thousand rooms to 10,000 rooms in less than 8 years. And so that was a big concentration.
We're now at 150.
150,000 today. And so all of a sudden, we had the weekend business because the people came in from Southern California. But that Sunday through Thursday, it slowed down.
But wait a minute, how did they get here in those days from California? What were they coming in at? That little bitty road?
Just the 2-lane road right up to Vegas, yes.
Which took how long?
Oh, in those days.
Good. A day.
Yeah, it was a long time.
Okay.
Depending on the traffic, depending on the trucks and so forth. But that was it, and so that was the primary way to get here. But there wasn't any business, and it was very slow. So
all we were gambling in the shows.
Gambling in the shows. Yeah, that was primarily
And the weather.
it.
I mean, the weather was a draw.
Weather. Okay. You know, I remember when the test site, and I know that's a conversation for a later time, but when they had the above ground testing, international and national reporters came here, and sometimes they couldn't have the blast go off because of weather, so they would be here 3, 4, 5 days waiting for the test. So they were writing stories about Las Vegas and what was happening, pictures at the swimming pool, the entertainers. So that started happening, and then the Southern California entertainment industry, they came up here to relax and have a good time. So, but what happened was that the community, the hotel community, the business community, the Chamber of Commerce all got together and said, we need to have a convention center because we need to have that midweek business, and that's how it started. And Herb McDonald was part of that. Bud Albright. Bud Albright's the one who came up with the room tax, and figured that 5% on every room rented out could be used to build the convention center, operate the convention center, market the destination of Las Vegas, as well as provide for recreational facilities for all of us who live here. A winning combination. Who would have thought what he wrote down that day was going to produce all of this?
So what was built? I know what was built, and we have a picture coming because I was there. We had season tickets.
Right.
How many seats did that?
Right. Well, you have to remember, before the convention center, there was the Joe W. Brown racetrack.
Right, the
horse
track.
Horse
that's
track.
when we came
right.
here.
The racetrack, which was not successful.
And I know we're running out of time, so you have to do the convention and get us the big one. But then we came in '64 on August 24th or 28th, and there was somebody in town before us. But please tell us some more. So what was going on in there?
So we opened. We 6,800 seats in the rotunda. We had about 12 meeting rooms, and we had about 175,000 square feet of space. Ironically, our first convention was the World Congress of Flight, which was an international convention, which is the business we're going after today. And that started the success of Las Vegas being a convention city.
And when did you start working with them, and what were you doing?
I started in 1973 as the charge of marketing research. So I started doing all the research on
So you were just watching this. Had you ever been in there?
Oh yes, I roller skated there in 8th grade. They used to have roller skating at the convention center on Friday and Saturday nights. Played high school basketball in there. Went to see basketball games, circus, all of those things.
And of course, our rebels as we move.
Right, and got to see the Beatles.
Okay,
shows,
now there we are, because we are just so close to being out of town. We came in late August. What came just before we came here?
The Beatles.
The Beatles, for heaven's sakes.
Right.
Where did they stay? How did you take care of them? Did you get to be there with them, either of you?
Nope, didn't get close. I was still in high school, so didn't have a chance.
I would have
was in the audience.
myself to be
in the
there.
audience.
I was a disc jockey, and I didn't think they were going to go anywhere. My group was the Led Zeppelins, and who cares about these mophead Beatles?
So take a look at the monitor here. Here they come, these youngsters, and were there mobs there? Were there mobs there, Rossi?
Every place they went, from the airport to all the way to the Sahara where they stayed, and then at the convention center, you might see some of that in some of this footage. But
had they been to Yankee Stadium yet, or was that after? Were we the first run for them?
No, I think they came across. They came. I think they're on the way to L.A.
They're on their way to L.A. Yeah.
But the Sahara Hotel should be given some. They were unique, and they booked people that were in the news.
That's Del Webb.
Del Webb, but the entertainment department there was really in advance. They would read the newspaper and look for maybe not the best entertainer, but who was hot, who was news, and so they brought the Beatles.
So
in,
here they are. Yeah. Where are they pulling into here now? They're just
that's
pulling
the back. That's the back of the convention center. Stan Irwin is the one who brought him in.
Yes.
And he did that. He was a promoter. He was originally only going to have them at the Sahara. But as soon as they announced that they were going to appear, the tickets started selling like crazy. They had to move it to the convention center and then add a second show. So we had 2 shows.
And so how many seats did you say the convention center held about?
About 6,800 for that.
So there probably still were those youngsters and adults that couldn't get in there. Is it on the sign? Look at that.
Yep.
Can you believe that at the convention center? Whoever would have thunk? Is that awesome? And how dumb of Oscar and me, we came in the next week. We had no idea. But this was, so what was the evaluation afterwards? What was the sense of what was going on here in Las Vegas in entertainment to really click us to the next level, where we did get the Judy Garlands, and we probably in the 60s, I know we already had the Rat Pack. I mean, became a concentration. Sweet Charity with Gwen Verdon, I remember.
A lot of
Caesars.
experimentation. There was a lot of competition for talent. The Sands, I think, really had a very strong lineup with that whole, the Dean Martin, the Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop. They really had some very quality acts, Jack and Trotter. And he was able to bring in a lot of great folks. Sarah Hotel, their niche was what's new, what's hot, what's going on. And the other ones tried a variety of things.
What
Broadway
did the Riv
shows.
do? I mean, you said you were at the Riv.
Broadway show. Well, I was cleaning up dishes at the Riv.
Okay, so you
wasn't
didn't even
wasn't
know what was
booking,
going on.
But it was. They did a lot of Broadway show adaptations. They shortened them down to an hour.
Yes, but how about the showgirl type of thing that we really have lost now? We don't seem to have any of those spectacular showgirl.
All right. Well, the standard format would be a comedian and the showgirls, and then sometimes the comedian would come back on, and then the major star. But you'd remember in the 50s especially, and in the 60s, to appear in Las Vegas, that was a big thing for an entertainer. And it was all of those famous entertainers that had been in the big cities now were coming into Las Vegas because it was a place that they could appear, not be bothered too much, and would draw great crowds, and that was part of how that evolution happened too. So they wanted to play in Las Vegas. One of the reasons why you'd see a lot of the new acts would really fight to be able to come in, some of the especially singers, was because of that reputation of being in Las Vegas.
But those did pretty much stay out on the Strip, did they not? They didn't come to the downtown.
Well, there
Do
wasn't
you
a
know
lot
why?
Of, there wasn't a lot of venues downtown.
No showrooms?
No, really. Show the Salsegi and the Overland didn't have it.
Yeah.
The El Cortez had a very small showroom,
Right.
not even that, more like a little stage. Golden Nugget
What
later
about
on.
the El Portal?
Well, more of a movie house.
That was
More,
movie
more of a. And by the time the 50s, it was really just a theater. But I think with the showgirls, you can almost break it up into 2 groups. The sort of the groups that Rossi was talking that would be part of, they would come out and dance.
Right.
And then the showgirls per se would be like at the Tropicana or at the Stardust, the Follies. That was really the era of the showgirls when they would come out and show.
Right. And the French, Lean Renault, I remember, and
Right.
all the shows that would come from Paris that did their training in there and in England and then came over here as backup. We also had, and I recall in the early 60s, the lounges where not has-been, but entertainers who were on their way up would appear in the lounge for $1 a drink or 50 cents a drink. I mean, it was just, and did we have in those days, and I don't mean to cast aspersions on anything, but did we have union issues in the staging and the issues that drove the costs of hiring these entertainers so high?
Not in the 50s or the 60s. I don't think there was any of. There got to be a point to where I think thin ice out here with a lack of specific knowledge. But as the hotels became corporations, everything became a different dollar, a different
Right.
figure. Every department, the comp sort of faded away to some degree. But the lounges were a significant place.
Oh, most definitely. And there was no cover minimum in the showrooms in the early 50s.
And food, they served you food,
They
a
had
full dinner.
They had a dinner show and they had a midnight show, but in the beginning there was no cover, no minimum. If you just wanted to come in and see the show, you could do that too. The lounges also started that way, but what really made the lounges, besides the tremendous entertainers who were there, is you never knew who was going to show up. You could have Don Rickles there, and here comes Dean Martin.
Yeah.
It was a party every night because they would finish their show, their midnight show, and then they would all be in these lounges. And that's a lot of that talent of the 60s and 70s and 80s grew up in the lounges of Las Vegas.
So did you both have a chance as young adults to live in that and go? I know, and I don't think people today understand what it's like to have been in those showrooms, how elegant, how beautifully people dressed. You didn't go in Bermudas and flip-flops. I mean, you really...
It was like in those days, you also dressed to go on an airplane.
Yes.
You dressed once you went out in public, you wore the suit and the tie. But Las Vegas was still as we heard that sort of promotion announcement, sort of a come as you are. That was our invitation. But still, people went to the shows, so they would be dressed, and it was just a different feeling. This is also a great time. Las Vegas just has these wonderful eras of moments as we grow and develop and expand, and we're just completely different than we were in the 40s and 50s. 50s, I still remember driving down the strip and seeing all these big plots of empty land. There was still lots of desert.
There was a lot of desert.
But it was exciting.
It was.
And every day was something different. And you mentioned the Thunderbird Downs. That's when we came here. I remember being able to hang over the wall of what now is Down Karen, and you could watch, couldn't afford to get in, of course, but watch the horse races and everything before the Hilton was built on that property. I want to go off to something really more serious and difficult. That's part of our community and our history, the atomic testing, which of course resulted in Nagasaki and Hiroshima and all the testing that was going on. How many miles outside of our city at that time, and what about? We're at 2.2 million now in southern Nevada. What was our population before you were born then? When they were doing that original testing?
Well, I think both. I was a little older than Rossi,
Okay.
but I think the population of Las Vegas was in the 50s to 100, probably 75,000 roughly in that period of time. But you have to remember, if you ever talk to anybody that worked on the dam,
Well,
they stood taller when they talked about the dam. Didn't care what you did at the dam, whether you just mixed concrete or whatever. I built the dam. That same sort of feeling was at the Nevada test site.
Wow.
They were protecting America during the Cold War. It was an honor to serve what they did. And yes, there were some mistakes that were made, not by the men and women that worked at the test site per se, but by the
well,
the
you said
government.
your father came over to work.
In 56.
All right, that was after, but still, I mean,
No, we were still doing atomic atmospheric testing through the late 50s. He went to work at NERVA. We helped building an engine to go to planets. It was an atomic engine to go to NERVA.
So what was the feeling in those days? If they're still testing your young people then growing up here, did you have any sense? Were you aware at your young age, now since you've shared the fact that you're that much older, did you have any sense of the destruction that was caused in the world? Or no?
In the classrooms, we would learn about that in the history part. But again, that feeling in the 50s, and I think Bob hit it on the head. That was part of keeping us free during the Cold War. And the atom is your friend. There was that going on, and so we knew that was part of protecting us. So, and being above ground, I can remember standing out on the patio at my house out in Twin Lakes, and everybody come and wake me up at 5 o'clock in the morning to see the blast go out. And so, because that was the entire sky lit up. It was.
What did it look like?
Just a big giant orange.
Became daytime.
Daytime. Yeah, it just did that. In fact,
Color? There was color? There was
all
color
kinds
to
of
it?
colors, purple colors at the end when it would be going up, but the yellows and reds and.
Benny
Yeah.
put out postcards. We had postcards that we were up in Atom City.
Oh, is that clever?
Yeah, my dad worked at the Sands, and it's really difficult to see today. But in those days, with all the empty land, it kind of has that little bit of turn there. When they knew the bomb blast was going to go off, they would close the casino, shut it down. Everybody would go out in the middle of the street, the strip, watched the bomb blast. When it was over, they went right back into the hotel. I mean, it was part of the culture of the country at the time, and it was covered nationally and internationally as far as that testing was concerned.
So at that time, there was a sense of this is good for the country. I'd love to hear some more about that feeling, because obviously, as now we are looking at bringing radioactive, low level, middle, upper, whatever level here and storing it close by.
We have a
Tell
wonderful
us.
facility in town, the Atomic Testing Museum, and it really tells the story. And you talk to those folks, and there's a slight bit of defensiveness because they are really and still proud of the work that they did, and should be in a lot of ways. They put themselves in harm's way with a lot of different things that were going on, and it did change our culture to a significant degree in Southern Nevada. You had 4, 5, 8, 10,000 scientists and skilled workers that were at the Nevada test site, and they lived in town, so they were your next door neighbors, or they were your father, or you knew somebody, and so it was to look back and to see what occurred when the wind shifted to southern Utah and the mistakes that were made. There were some significant errors.
Did you feel as a child growing up, and we know, yes, everything always changes, and we find things that are faults that are created by something new that started sometimes. I mean, we're now looking at technology and as wonderful a tool it is, and how fabulous information we can get to it so quickly and share it.
In the 50s, our enemy was Russia.
Okay.
Was the Soviet Union
and was
in the
there
50s.
a fear? Was there an element among young people of fear, or were you just normal young people?
Well, the duck and cover was.
Duck and cover in the
did
classrooms. We had that drill. Of course, leading up to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which put all the focus on all of that. The other part is that Southern Nevada has always had a rich history of being part of the military strength of the United States with the gunnery range at Nellis, and then Nellis Air Force Base, Creech Air Force Base.
When did Nellis come on board?
Well, it started in 41, 42 as an Army air. There was no Air Force. It was the Army Air Force. The Air Force didn't become the Air Force until
And out in that same location?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, and what was it there?
Well, first it was Western Air Express Airport.
Okay.
Then the war came, and the city of Las Vegas. And by the way, when the city of Las Vegas signed the agreement with the Army to lease that land out there, it had to be signed by 2 city commissions. There were 2 sitting city commissions. At that time, it was a big court battle, and half the city commission had resigned under protest. The court said you can't resign. So both of them, when you look at those documents, two groups of city councilmen had to sign those documents. That was 41.
Isn't that amazing?
It was
and then did it just morph into Nellis, or was that?
It was shut down after the war. It was going to be shut down.
In 45.
In 45. Okay. And then there was a hue and cry, and Senator McCarran, with a lot of energy, it became an Air Force base. In 1951-52, it was
now
Nellis
here
Air
you
Force
are
Base.
at the same time that the testing is still going on. They're here. So what did that do to everything that was going on as far as your psyche as a young person growing up here? You've got the testing on one side. You got Nellis. Was
I don't know. I mean, I felt like it was a teenager. First of all, I'm working and going to school and I'm playing pool. Those things were not in my frame of reference as a teenager.
Yeah, and the real impact for us was that we would have a few students whose parents were stationed at Nellis, and so we would have kids from all over the country coming here because they were stationed at Nellis, and so that kind of changed the dynamics of growing up and going to school, because many of them would be there for 2 or 3 years and then they would get transferred. But that also, changed some of the people coming in, and a lot of people who were stationed at Nellis wound up being permanent residents here.
There was an awkward moment too.
Yeah.
The fear in those days, in the early 50s, we had 3 or 4 of the planes from Nellis Air Force Base crash in the urban areas of the valley. North Las Vegas, and so there was also some awkward time with the men that were stationed at Nellis Air Force Base and the hometown folks, the hometown kids. There were some issues.
So we've been working. I mean, there's the Nellis Civilian Interactive Group
Right.
that we all belong to now to make sure. So I gather that was an outgrowth of
Exactly.
that. And so the residual effect of anything going on out at, aside from the National Museum of Atomic Testing,
Yes.
which we would love to see come downtown because it's part of our historical, life,
perfect
blood,
place.
perfect place for them. The other pieces, you've been out there several times. I haven't been out in about 2 years, I guess, but been through it. It's a very accurate recitation and pictorial of what that was like.
Yes.
And did you feel it did anything other than the residual effect of the winds and unfortunately for the southern Utahns, no residual bad effect here?
I don't. Part of it, Las Vegas has always been a boom town. We're always looking tomorrow, and one of the challenges being on the Historic Preservation Commission is it's going to be very difficult to preserve anything on the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, there's just a real
Blow it up and put something else up.
right. So it's always a fresh and a new thing. In the 90s, it was billion-dollar hotels with these massive places. So there's always that sense of energy that is going on that kind of makes you not think about yesterday so much. And so
Okay, so that's going to lead me right into one of my favorite subjects. I don't know if it's Rossi's, but I know it's yours.
okay,
Media coverage.
okay.
Here we are with the test site, and how's the media looking at that? How is it selling it to the world? Did we have a place in national media coverage because of that, which brought us more people, perhaps a burgeoning convention growth? We began to see that. What was the media doing?
Was the media, the selling of Las Vegas really came from Rossi's organization, the News Bureau.
Right.
And that was something that started in the 40s.
So the News Bureau, the umbrella for the News Bureau is the Convention Center?
Well, the Rotunda, that was that, and then the News Bureau as part of us. It started off with the Chamber of Commerce, and then Max Kelch founded it. And it was really to get information out on what was going on in Las Vegas. And it was simple as taking those pictures of the entertainers, taking the pictures of the sun and the fun and the golf and everything, and just plastering America with all of that. And if you see some of the old pictures of the News Bureau, of the showrooms, they would not sometimes they wouldn't take a picture of the entertainer. They'd take a picture of who was in the audience, and there'd be Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall and David Niven and Kirk Douglas, and so they were out there
keep
too.
coming. I like this.
Yeah,
You ask a 15-year-old today, who's Kirk Douglas?
Yeah, but
They look
but
at you.
they were there, and so that was all
Awesome.
part of that excitement too. And so, but the News Bureau was so instrumental in doing that in the pictorial history of what we were from the late 40s to today. You can't replace that. And then the other part of that, you tie that in with the other cultural thing we have, which is the neon and the Neon Museum, which is saving what was a critical part of the glamour and the lights and everything of Las Vegas.
Well, and of course, Jack Kennedy, President Kennedy, elected, and his tie to the Rat Pack and all
Right.
of that.
Yep.
That didn't hurt Las Vegas
Right,
at
and-
all.
And Ocean's 11 with the Rat Pack, all of that, and movies being made here, and I mean all of that is just combined. And I think Bob really hit it on the head. Is that we look for tomorrow, and we know that there's opportunity out there, and that's what has kept Las Vegas where it is today and continues to grow.
Well, to me, people always, and we hear it all the time throughout Las Vegas and throughout the state, diversify the economy. The reality is, actually, we are a tourist-based, convention-based industry. Now, we're going to diversify and try these other pockets, but the reality is, tell us a little bit about the growth of the convention business. We start in that little bubble of 6,800. What do we got What did we go to, and what are we looking for in this next development?
Well, if you look at the history, and of course conventions are booked 8, 9, 10 years out, and so you have to look to the future. That goes back to that futuristic look. We've got billions of dollars of business on our books right now, but we had to have the space to be able to take care of some of the bigger trade shows. So as we added more space, we were able to attract the home builders, the broadcasters, the shopping centers, those types of shows, Comdex, and then CES. And so we kept adding more and more space, which is what we're going to be doing now, because we're going to go from 3 million square feet of space to 5 million square feet of space. So we'll be able to attract any type of a show that we need to have, but we have the hotel to take care of it. I mean, the hotel rooms to take care of it. We have the airport to take care of it. And as I always tell people, we're the only city that evolved to host people. So we take care of the customer, and that's key. And so we just got to keep that
And how many years in a row are we #1?
23 years as the #1 trade show destination in North America.
Isn't that? I
So-
mean, that's so incredible. And where else can you find? You can get into a hotel room 15 minutes from the airport. And we have, at this point, with many planned to come, 150,000 hotel rooms to put heads in beds.
Heads in beds.
And so, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. We're out of time almost, and I want to get some closing comment. I mean, I know you mentioned the Centennial Commission,
Right.
and what year was a dumbbell here? What year was the Centennial, the celebration of the city, and what are we doing with that?
Well, the then mayor, Oscar Goodman,
Don't know
a group of us suggested that we should have a celebration. It was our 100th birthday, not as a city.
Oh,
We didn't become a city until 1911. That's when we first elected our first mayor. So that became before that we were an unincorporated town. But put that aside.
absolutely.
Okay, so May 15th, 1905 is when, in essence, Las Vegas, the community, was created. So in 2005, we had our 100th birthday. So we talked to the mayor, and he said, that would be a great idea. We'll have a great one-day celebration. And then we talked to him a little bit more, and he finally said, you know what, maybe we'll do the whole year. And so once he got on board, he became the champion of the Centennial Commission. And out of that, through Louise Helton and Bob Coffin, who is now then a state senator and now a council person, was able to get a license plate. And the money from the sale of that special license plate, which has Betsy Willis's Welcome to Las Vegas sign on it, part of the money when you buy that license plate goes to preserve and celebrate Las Vegas history.
So that continues on. I see it everywhere on people's, the back of there. So they have a choice, and the residual of that will come to help preserve this wonderful history. You two are so phenomenal. I mean, we could go on for more hours. I'm going to talk to our producer to continue on, because we have to talk about the 60s. We haven't talked about the 70s. We missed Howard Hughes. And thank you so much for being here, and we thank you for watching at home. We'll see you next time for another episode of Hello, Mayor. Have a great day or night or whatever you're doing. And thank you both. You're absolutely the best. We got the mob. We have so much more to talk about.
Thank you, Mayor.